64,000 people dead. I mean, what, over half women and children and innocent people? And now we're talking about building a paradise on top of their bodies. It's a little difficult for me.
Well, welcome back to the channel. Today we are on Piers Morgan Uncensored, and as you can see, we've got a panel here which includes Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire and Vinny from the Patrick Bet-David podcast, and they are talking about Donald Trump's plan for Gaza, which he unveiled just yesterday as I record this. And I have to admit, it sounds pretty wacky. I'm not sure I agree with it. Let's see what Piers Morgan and his panel have to say about this, about Donald Trump's plan for Gaza.
Even earlier, which is that in this war, you have two belligerents with the same rational strategic objective, namely the ethnic cleansing of the other. And so when we're talking about the Israelis, it does seem that the implicit and rational strategic objective would be to get the Palestinian Arabs out of Gaza because they can no longer tolerate the security risk that was proven on October 7th. I don't blame them for it. If I were the Prime Minister of Israel, I would have the same view. And we can't let the Palestinian Arabs off the hook here. They elected Hamas. Their explicit goal, their perfectly clearly stated goal is the ethnic cleansing, if not the outright genocide of Jews in Israel. So I guess my question to people who are clutching their pearls and who are scratching their heads is, what did you expect to happen? For the fact that President Trump is at least giving a little bit of leverage for a broader deal here seems to me the best resolution that we've had so far.
Well, Michael Knowles, of course, is from the Daily Wire. His colleague is Ben Shapiro, and as far as I can tell, Ben Shapiro, of course, and the Daily Wire are totally pro-Israel. They love the way that America supports Israel, and they love that, well, let's put it mildly, let's face it, Israel has enormous political power and cultural power and social power in the United States. I do not think that's a good thing. The war in Gaza is tragic. And frankly, I just don't think it's our problem. I don't think it's the United States' problem. I don't think it's Europe's problem. But Israel, from the statements I've been seeing today as I record this, they want to make it our problem, specifically when it comes to refugees. They literally just want to send all the refugees, cleanse them ethnically cleanse them from Gaza, perhaps from the West Bank too, for all I know, and just send them to Egypt or Jordan or Europe, as one Israeli official said today. Let's get back into it and see what these other panelists have to say.
Omar, because I've known Trump a long time, and one of his favored techniques is to say something that sounds very outrageous, sounds very shocking, sounds very extreme, to jolt people to a negotiating table. I've seen him do this many, many times. We've just seen it with the tariffs, with Mexico, Canada, and the ongoing row with China. This is part of his playbook. So I don't for a moment think that he believes this is actually achievable the way he laid out yesterday. But do I think that there is some kind of middle ground here where America took charge of Gaza for the foreseeable future, helped rebuild Gaza, and that some people from Gaza do end up going to Jordan and Egypt, as many have in the past, by the way, and that some would return to a revitalized, rebuilt Gaza. Is that beyond the realms of acceptability to people in Palestine?
Yeah, Piers, Trump has said many extreme things in the past, but this is by far the most extreme position he has put out, and that, quite frankly, is a very high bar given the fanaticism with which he utters policy proposals on just about everything. Effectively, at this point, what he's proposing is the destruction of Palestinian society in Gaza, the scattering of Palestinians to neighboring countries, and then for Trump to come and own the Gaza Strip. I mean, it's utter lunacy that the President of the United States is speaking in those terms. And listening to Michael talk about insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. The thing that has been done over and over again is Trump giving a carte blanche, and the United States in general, for decades, giving a carte blanche for Israel to behave however it wants towards the Palestinians, dominating them, besieging them, bombing them at will, and never putting any conditions on that support. Frankly, if you want to do something different and try something different, rather than turn to the victims of Israeli occupation and brutality for decades and say maybe the new thing we're going to try is to scatter you and send you somewhere else and ethnically cleanse you, the new thing you should be trying is applying pressure on Israel to end its brutal occupation of the Palestinian territories, to say that at this point, every major human rights organization in the world is describing Israel's onslaught in Gaza as genocidal, and to say there's not going to be another penny from the United States unless this genocide comes to an immediate end and we start working towards allowing Palestinians to be a free people in their own country. That is the trying something new that would actually achieve a better result, rather than this insanity of looking at an entire history of utterly deranged American policy of just enabling Israel's worst behavior and saying, well, the new thing, maybe we just have not been tough enough on the victims, and that's what we must do different. It's utterly bonkers.
Okay.
I can agree somewhat with this guy. I would go a step further, and I agree with him about America's insane foreign policy with regard to Israel. I think we should just cut all ties with Israel. I really do not care if Israel is the so-called only democracy in the Middle East. It's just not our problem. I don't see their struggle. I don't see the fight between Israel and the Arabs, the Jews and the Arabs, as we used to call it when I was young, ending anytime soon. It's been going on for decades, many decades now, and it's just not our problem. They are making it our problem. So I would just cut off all strings. I would cut off the purse strings to Israel immediately. Of course, that's not going to happen. Donald Trump is extremely pro-Israel. Despite all of the good things he's been doing in his first 3 weeks in office so far, he's really been shaking things up. I really agree with a lot of the stuff, but this constant need to back up Israel and this kind of American reflex to throw its might around, throw its weight around, and bring its full might to bear in different parts of the world just needs to stop. I think most Americans just don't care. They really don't care. Just not our problem. And there are many more pressing problems at home in the United States. And in Europe too, for that matter. Of course, the European leaders have all pretty much sided with Israel as far as I know. But let's get back into it and see what these other guys have to say.
Okay, Vinny, what's your response to that?
Piers, I have mixed emotions with this entire situation, but I always like to go back to, we can't talk about where we are today, Piers, until figuring out how we got here. October 7th, you mentioned, Piers, 15 months ago, worst attack, almost, 1,300 civilians murdered by Hamas. Horrible, horrible day. But the fact that, and John Kirby came out a week after and said, people were asking, how could this happen? How could the most secure piece of land in the entire planet, okay, Piers, I don't know if you've ever been to Israel. Dogs walk past these freaking security. Okay, so you cannot tell me at all that Mossad, the Shin Bet, and the IDF not only had no idea that it happened, it appears, for 6 to 12 hours in certain places, this happened. And when you have John Kirby coming up in front of the White House, and he was like, you know what? People were asking, what happened? Now's not the time. And then Bibi's attitude is, you know what? Maybe after the war. So no answered questions. Nobody knows what happens, Piers. But and then also, October 13, 2023, the Israeli Minister of Intelligence had a document coming out, Alternatives to Political Directive for Civilian Population in Gaza. They had a plan ready to go, put all these people in tents, disperse them around the Middle East, then to Europe, then to Canada, and use influence from the U.S. To pressure other countries to take these people. Okay, you mentioned Egypt doesn't want them. Jordan doesn't want them. I don't know how persuasive Trump is going to be to take people. But I mean, Piers, put yourself in the innocent people, the people that have nothing to do with it. They're not terrorists. They don't support Hamas. Their country, their land, is flattened. Now they're gone, and now you're hearing people saying, oh, we're going to build it. And yeah, maybe these people could come back, Piers. There's over, 64,000 people dead. I mean, over half women and children and innocent people. And now we're talking about building a paradise on top of their bodies. It's a little difficult.
Do you know what,
for
Vinny?
me,
I'm
Piers,
very.
I don't know, man.
I'm a bit taken aback by. Well, I wasn't expecting you to take that line so vehemently, because it seems to me that what you're basically you feel this is a complete non-starter, this Trump idea, and should be. I'm not put words in your mouth, but should be just rejected.
No, well, Piers, here's my, and this is where I'm conflicted, like I said in the beginning. With this situation, Piers, when I was a kid and I would fight with my brother over a toy, okay, my father would come in, my mom would come in, and they'd warn us, guys, stop fighting over this toy. And after 3 or 4 times, they'd finally come in and say, you know what? Nobody's playing with the toy. Nobody gets the toy. Okay, Piers, I'm a Christian, and that land, Piers, is where Jesus Christ was. Okay, so I'm conflicted, Piers, because I want that land to be preserved. I want to be able to go there and visit. So maybe, Piers, maybe this might be a good thing where Trump is going to come in, and just as long as there's no fighting. My only thing is the people that were there, they should have a right to come back to their land, Piers. Plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that.
Yeah, I have to agree with Vinny here. It is just ghoulish to ethnically cleanse the entire Gaza Strip, which has now been flattened, as we've all seen the pictures. It's horrific. Been a lot of death there, and then to build, some sort of, what do they call it, the Israeli or the Gaza Riviera on top of it. It just seems outrageous. Now, like Piers said, maybe this is just Donald Trump doing what Donald Trump does, and what he does very well, which is to just float all sorts of ideas. He does sort of like real-time, in public brainstorming. Or maybe he has an idea behind it. He's floating an outrageous idea, but he really wants something else. But what Vinny was saying, Vinny was like skirting dangerously close with to conspiracy theories there about how, the Israeli authorities, it's impossible that they could not have known that the attack was imminent or that it wasn't even underway. And their lack of response or lack of a timely response was outrageous, considering that basically all of Israel is highly, highly controlled by the military, especially the West Bank and Gaza. It does seem very unlikely. In other words, it seems very likely that Bibi Netanyahu knew exactly what was going to happen. Not just him, but other high-ups in the Israeli government knew exactly what was going to happen, and they let it happen. Who knows? Maybe we'll find out.
Scott Horton. Well, let me bring in Scott. He's not spoken yet. Scott, look, the part of Trump's speech which did resonate with me was, we've tried everything to sort this out and nothing has worked. And clearly, none of the ideas he's been given in the last few months, preparing to come back into the White House, have made him think that any of that's going to work either. So he's throwing something out there, a kind of firebomb idea, I think, to rattle everyone's cage and try and force people to come to some kind of resolution that could work. That's my gut feeling. I might be wrong. Sometimes I'm completely wrong about Donald Trump and what he really thinks. But it just seems to me he's negotiating here, wanting people to get their heads together and work out what could work. What's your sense?
I agree with that. And your opening statement for this segment, too, that he's playing hardball and I suppose is trying to get Qatar, Saudi, Egypt, Jordan to take responsibility probably for the occupation and rebuilding. And then also, of course, as we're talking about here, the cleansing and the so-called resettlement of these people. So I think any mention of, oh, yeah, no, we're going to make a nice place for the Palestinians to live, they don't mean that.
Yeah, I agree with that. They probably do not mean that. And if I recall correctly, please let me know in the comments, actually. Wasn't Jared Kushner talking about, like a year ago or so, maybe more, about how it'll be great after the war in Gaza is over because then they can, then property developers can redevelop it and turn it into, the Riviera, basically a big resort on the Mediterranean. And of course, then there's the issue of, isn't there oil off the coast of Gaza? Is that another conspiracy theory or not? Does the U.S. want access to that oil, or maybe Israel does? Yeah, a lot of unanswered questions here. A lot of unanswered questions. It will be interesting to see how this plays out in the days and weeks ahead. Let me know what you think in the comments about this, about Trump's plan, about Trump in general in his first 3 weeks in office of his second term. Very interesting times. It is tragic for the people of Gaza, though. Yeah, I don't think they should just be scattered to the wind. Just like the Romans scattered the Jews to the wind in, in 70 AD, when the Romans destroyed the temple in Jerusalem and scattered the Jews to the winds. That's how they ended up being a wandering people across the North Africa and in Europe. Anyway, let me know what you think about this, and if you like this kind of content, please do like and subscribe. It really helps me grow the channel and continue making content for you.